Hey, boys and girls, this book is called A Passover Holiday Cookbook by Emily Raabe. A Passover Holiday Cookbook. This is the table of contents. The table of contents tells you what subjects or chapters are in the book and what pages they start on. The story of Passover. Jewish people celebrate Passover every year at the beginning of spring. Passover always falls on the 15th day of the month of Nisan in the Jewish lunar calendar. In our modern calendar, this holiday is close to Easter. During Passover, Jewish people remember the amazing story of how their ancestors escaped from slavery in Egypt about 3,000 years ago. The Passover holiday lasts for 8 days and nights. In the country of Israel, Passover lasts for 7 days and nights. Food, stories, and sharing memories are at the center of the Passover celebration. The foods served and eaten during this holiday are reminders of events in Jewish history. And Passover is a time to celebrate with family and friends. Escape from Egypt. About 3,000 years ago, the Jewish people were called the Israelites. A man named Pharaoh, who ruled Egypt, enslaved the Israelites. Jewish legend says God spoke to a Jewish shepherd named Moses. God told Moses to ask Pharaoh to set the Jewish people free. Moses did this, but Pharaoh refused to free the Jewish people. According to the Bible, God then punished the Egyptian people with terrible plagues. The stories say that God made cattle sick, turned rivers into blood, and made the daytime turn dark, and had the Egyptians suffer. Still, Pharaoh would not let the Israelites go free. According to a Bible story, God appeared in the form of a burning bush and spoke to Moses. Excuse me. Passing over. The Hebrew name for Passover is Pesach, meaning passing over. The Israelites spoke Hebrew, and this language is still spoken by Jews in Israel today. Jewish legend says the last plague that God sent down was to have an angel kill all of the Egyptians' firstborn sons. God instructed Moses to tell the Jews to mark their houses so that the angel of God would pass over them, and leave the Jewish sons in safety. Egypt's Pharaoh finally gave in and set the Jewish slaves free. Then he changed his mind and sent his armies after the Jews. God helped Moses split the Red Sea, which lay between Egypt and Israel, and this made a dry path for the Israelites to pass through into safety. When Pharaoh's armies tried to follow the Israelites, God closed the sea against them, and Pharaoh's armies were drowned. The Israelites were set free. Passover is a celebration of this freedom. Matzo. The Israelites had to leave Egypt quickly, and they left so quickly that they had no time to wait for their bread dough to rise. Instead, they had to dry the dough in the hot desert sun. The sun dried the dough into thin, flat bread that was like a cracker. Today, the Jewish people celebrate Passover. They eat a food called matzo. Matzo is a bread that has no yeast in it. Yeast is what makes bread dough rise. Because it has no yeast in it, matzo is thin and hard, like a cracker. Jewish people eat matzo during Passover. That helps them remember that their ancestors fled Egypt. They did not have time to wait for their bread dough to rise. And one way to eat matzo is to mix it with eggs and fry it like a pancake. This is called matzo brie. Matzo brie. This is a recipe if you wanted to make it. Chametz. Just before Passover, every Jewish home is cleaned from top to bottom. This is done to get rid of every last crumb of bread and food that has yeast in it. Jewish people call these forbidden foods chametz. All the chametz has to be eaten or given away before the holiday starts. Jewish families even use different dishes and silverware during Passover. They want to make sure that they don't touch even a trace of chametz during the holiday. During Passover, food is cooked without using leavening ingredients such as yeast and baking powder. Instead, Passover foods have matzo meal, which is like cornmeal but made from matzo. Although certain foods are forbidden during Passover, people who keep kosher for Passover still can eat many delicious foods that are kosher for Passover, such as chocolate macaroons. Ooh, chocolate macaroons. That's a recipe for chocolate macaroons if you wanted to make those with your parents. The Seder meals. The first 2 nights of Passover are celebrated with special dinners called Seders. In Israel, because the Passover holiday lasts for only 7 days, the Seder is for 1 night. The first Seder meal begins after sundown and the first day of Passover. During Seder meals, Jewish families pray, sing, and retell the stories of the Israelites' escape from Egypt. Children at the Seder meals take part in the storytelling. They also can help to prepare the special foods for Passover. Grandparents and parents share Passover recipes with their children. And although the Seder is serious, it is also a joyful celebration and a time to relax with friends and family. The Seder plate is divided into several sections. The food in each section represents the Jewish people's escape from Egypt. The Seder plate. In the center of the Seder table is the Seder plate. This plate is divided into sections and has different foods in each section. And each food represents certain things from the story of the Jewish people's escape from Egypt. The food on the Seder plate are charoset, parsley, roasted egg, and roasted lamb bone, and bitter herbs. Charoset, an apple mixture, represents the mortar or cement that the Jewish slaves used to make bricks for Pharaoh. Parsley represents springtime and hope. Dipped into salt water, it represents the tears of the Jewish slaves. The egg is a symbol of spring and the new things are born. The lamb bone represents the animal sacrifice that Israelites made to God when they became free. Bitter herbs such as horseradish represent the sadness of slavery. And this is a recipe for charoset if you wanted to make that with your family. Welcoming Elijah. During the Passover Seder, people drink wine or grape juice. They refill their glasses 4 times. These 4 glasses of wine are symbols of the different stages of the Israelites' escape to freedom. Another glass of wine is filled and put at the table for the prophet Elijah. The Jewish Savior. Jews believe that Elijah visits every Jewish home on Passover. Another Seder tradition is to place 3 pieces of matzo under a cloth cover on the Seder table. 1 piece of matzo is broken in half. 1 half of the broken matzo is put back under the napkin, and the other half is hidden for children to find after the meal. Sometimes the lucky child who finds this hidden piece receives a prize. During the Seder, a family member, usually the youngest, opens the door to welcome Elijah into their home. Passover around the world. Jewish people around the world celebrate Passover. Although the celebration is usually the same, no matter where you live, the food can be slightly different. In the United States, the charoset is made of apples, walnuts, and sweet wine. In Italy, Jewish families make the charoset from dates, oranges, raisins, and figs. In some countries in Africa, the main part of the Seder meal might be a rice or vegetable dish. In France, Germany, and elsewhere, rice is a food that is not eaten at all during Passover. Families in America often start the Seder meal with gefilte fish, matzo ball soup. For the main part of the dinner, they might have beef or roast turkey. A popular dish in both America and Israel is sweet potato kugel. This dish can be a main dish or a sweet dessert. Sweet potato kugel. Passover is celebration. Passover is sometimes called the Spring Festival. The joyful celebration of Passover welcomes the end of the winter and the beginning of spring. It is also sometimes called the time of our freedom. It helps people to remember the sadness of slavery and then the joy that the Israelites felt when they were freed from their long slavery. Certain foods cannot be eaten during Passover, but there are many delicious foods that are eaten, especially at Passover. Learning to make some of those foods can be a great way to keep alive the traditions surrounding the holiday. No matter where in the world the Passover holiday is celebrated, it is always a wonderful time to cook, eat, remember the past, and to celebrate with family and friends. And this is the glossary, and a glossary is a list of important words and what their definitions are. And this is the index The index also has a list of important words and tells you what pages those words can be found on. A Passover Holiday Cookbook. I hope you love this book.